Welcome, everybody, to the Art of Slowing Down podcast. It's your host here, Analena, and I am very delighted to have Athen Chimenti here with me today. He is an astrologer, educator, and leading expert in the field of True Sidereal Astrology. He's also dedicated to spreading the word about True Sidereal and how powerful it is at bringing clarity and direction to people's lives. And Athen has helped more than 5,000 people from around the world gain clarity through his astrology readings. And he has also taught more than 100 astrologers to become professionals in the field and thousands more through his videos and courses. And I'm so happy you're here, Athen. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Analena. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so I think I briefly shared with you that I have been into the human design space for quite some time right now, and I have found it very enlightening also about this clarity and my sense of purpose, giving myself permission more of who I am. I think that's really what all these tools are about, right? And stop questioning myself so much. And also then the gene keys I have been diving deeper into because that's really the 64 archetypal energies we have from the Chinese I Ching. And I just find that amazing. And then there's astrology, right? Astrology is a really, really big part of human design. And I never really knew much about it, to be honest. There was not a real access point for me. I found a lot of things confusing, and there's so many different astrology systems out there that I find it just overwhelming. I also had some astrology readings, and what I found interesting is that people don't really tell you like what system they use, and you get a reading, and then I learned, well, there's some differences here, and well, there's some things that resonate, but then there are other things that are kind of I'm questioning maybe, and then I have another reading that says a little bit the opposite, and so I was kind of like not ready for it. And then somehow last year I found True Sidereal and First Sidereal. One of my students was talking about it. I was like, this is interesting. But again, I couldn't fully get into it. And then I learned about cosmic human design, which Richard Mason brought into the world. And he talked about you. He was like, check out Mastering the Zodiac. So I went to your website. I pulled my birth chart. This was the very first time where I was like, wow, okay, this is like everything. This is just like me. I thought, I have to keep some secrets. And it was not super crazy different than the tropical, I guess, but it just felt so much more right. And so ever since then, I have been talking about it to my audience. I have reached out to you, obviously. I also am now a student of yours, which I'm very happy about to learn about this myself more. But I wanted to give you now the opportunity to share actually how did you even come about this, what you call true sidereal astrology, and how is it different to the tropical, which we mainly use?
Yeah, totally. And I agree. I think, having an astrology session where this is kind of communicated up front, like, hey, we're using tropical or we're using sidereal, would really clarify a lot of stuff in the community. But yeah, so basically, you could divide up astrology systems into two types. Now, when I say systems, I'm talking about the zodiac system. So I'm only really talking about how the signs are calculated. So there's other things in astrology like the house systems and the aspects that you use and all these other things you can do with a chart. But when we talk about tropical and sidereal, we're really talking about the zodiac system, which means the signs, basically. So like you said, there's so much similarity between the tropical and the sidereal chart, because really two-thirds of it is the same, depending on what house system you use and depending on what aspects you use and stuff like this. But the only real difference there is the signs. So there's two general ways of determining the signs, your sun sign or your moon sign or whatever it is. And this is tropical and sidereal. So tropical is what most of us, the vast majority of us, are using in the West. Even if we don't know we are, if you're using a Western form of astrology, there's a 99% chance you're using what's called tropical. So what tropical does is it fixes the signs around the seasons. So in other words, right at the spring equinox, starts 0 degrees Aries. And that's why you'll see all of the sun signs are very consistent, about 30 days, and it's always the same date for all the sun signs. So it
Mm.
stays fixed with the seasons. But in the sky, the sun is not actually returning to that same spot every year. So this area that the sun is at during the spring equinox changes. And the change is very, very slow. So it's 1 degree, which there's 360 degrees in a wheel. So it's 1 degree every 72 years. So that means that it would take thousands of years, for there to even be a noticeable difference. However, where we are today, there is now a noticeable difference
Mm.
because tropical was established about 2,000 years ago. So now we're at the point where, depending on what system you use, there's about a 24-degree difference. So in what we'll talk about regular sidereal, it's 24 degrees. With true sidereal, which we'll talk about, which is basically using the actual size of the constellations. But in that system that we use here, it's up to 2 signs different. And this is ever changing. So the more time that passes, it'll be 24 degrees, then it'll be 25 degrees different, then 26, and then there'll be a point where it's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 signs apart. So it is ever growing. There was a lot of time where it was overlapping. And like you said, there's still some overlap because if you're within that kind of 6 degrees or whatever, you'll
Mm.
have the same signs. But there is a lot of differences. So that's basically the difference, is that tropical is using the seasons and it has fixed the zodiac to the seasons and it won't ever change. If you're born on the spring equinox, you will be a 0 degrees Aries. That'll never change. And with sidereal, we're basically using the visible sky, which is changing 1 degree every 72 years, which means your birth chart doesn't change. It doesn't mean your birth chart changes because your birth chart is the snapshot of the sky when you were born. But
Mm.
your birth date compared to someone who was born 2,000 years ago will be a different sun sign, for example, right? So your chart doesn't change, but the system in terms of the sky is changing. So tropical, seasonal, sidereal is the visible sky. And sidereal is actually very widely used in the East. So with those familiar with Hindu astrology or Vedic astrology, as it's also called, they use their form of sidereal. Now, do keep in mind that the Vedic system has their own entire system. So they're typically using very different house systems and ways of calculating the aspects and all that. But they are using a form of sidereal. Um, and it is similar to some of the forms in the west of sidereal in that they all use an even 30 degrees for the signs, just like
Mm.
tropical, right?
Yeah.
They're roughly 30 days for each of the sun signs. They also use 30 degrees as well. The issue there, though, is that the constellations are not all 30 degrees. In fact, none of them are exactly 30 degrees. They're all very different sizes. So you have Pisces and Virgo that are very large, for example, or Cancer and Scorpio that are much smaller. And so now we're talking about not only, sidereal and tropical. Now we're talking about, are you using tropical? Are you using mainstream sidereal, which is 30 degrees sidereal?
Mm.
Or are you using a form of true sidereal or astronomical sidereal, basically using the actual visible sky, the actual size of the constellations? I like to call true sidereal because it is true to the sky in that sense. So that's why there's so much, that's why it can be overwhelming. And that's why you have all these different, and in this case with human design, different human design charts and all of this. So me personally, I've chosen to, of course, use true sidereal. I was using tropical before, just like most astrologers, but it really just, clicked for me one day when there was a full moon in the sky. Those apps where you can hold up the app and see where you can visibly see all the
Yeah.
planets. And I wanted to see the full moon, and I always knew about sidereal. But it was all in the head. It's like I knew what sidereal was, but I
Mm.
didn't really give it much, thought, I guess. But when, I actually that day I held up the smartphone to the full moon, and, tropical and astrology was saying it's supposed to be in Gemini, I think it was. And then I saw it right in the middle of Taurus the bull, and I saw the bull and everything there in the sky. It really hit me. And then so from that point on, from that point, I slowly started to incorporate more sidereal. I did go to regular sidereal and then eventually to true sidereal to be the most, as close as I can to the visible sky.
Wow. I find it fascinating because we are now in this day and age where we know that the world is changing quickly through technology, right? And it's so interesting that we have it right at our fingertips, right? These smartphones. And it's also interesting. We just take it as as a given. It's true. Yeah, the moon is and it's not. I mean, it's almost
Exactly.
ridiculous. I mean, now that you're talking about it, it's like for real. No, and I have now also because I have access to the software now that you use the Prometheus, right? And I'm starting to see it now, and I'm like, and I'm a person I've always been. I love math, I love numbers, and I like things to be precise. When I was young, I used to like when we went out with my family and we had a dinner. At the time they wrote down like the prices of everything we ate and then they calculated. Like I would go there and recheck everything. Because I remember one time I told my grandpa, like, no, they didn't charge us enough. We need to let them know. And he got upset at me because, well, you shouldn't tell them when you got something for free. I was always like, I need this to be exact. And I think sometimes people really don't like that because, I think that's also why what you share really resonates so much with me because we have the tools available to make this accurate, right? And like, why not? Like, why not use it in a way that displays even more so who we are? And I just noticed how that felt when I pulled my chart on your website because it's a sense of calmness and there was nothing where before I was like, well, maybe I need to act differently here, or maybe I need to change something. That's what I have felt with other systems. Not in a bad way, but I also was told sometimes, well, maybe so one thing I'm going to give you an example. In my um tropical astrology, I have a grand trine apparently, or a trine, something like that. And it's in all air signs. Then Aquarius, Gemini, I mean, everything air signs. And I mean, look, I like to talk. I have a podcast and I was okay. But the one thing that people have been telling me over and over again is like, you're so grounding, you're so calming, and over again. Like, I cannot deny it, right? I was like, it's kind of weird. Like, I should have more earth energy. And I was told a little bit, maybe that's your shadow or something like this. Now in True Sidereal, all the air signs went into earth signs. So now I'm 80% in my chart. Now instead of Aquarius in my sun, I'm a Capricorn, right? And I'm also now a Taurus moon and no longer Gemini moon. So I mean, everything is, so now I can relax if just from that perspective, right? But before I was kind of like, I shouldn't come across so earthy and grounding, you know?
Yeah.
That's why it does make a difference. But then now my North Node is in Gemini, I think. So my sun is in the third house. I mean, that's the house of communication and everything, right? So I find those elements in other elements, but the few things where I felt like I need to change myself to fit in this,
Mm.
picture, now it's like, no, there's nothing that I have to fit in. This is just simply a reflection of who I am.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I feel about it too. I think astrology is best for like confirmation, you
Yeah.
know. So you can use, your astrology to grow and develop. And like you said with the north nodes, the nodes in general, especially, they're really where we can grow the most and stuff. But especially with planets, especially the sun and moon. I mean, these are things that should just be coming through naturally without you having to try and do anything.
Yeah.
And really, I think at that point, once you do get a reading or the report or whatever, it's like, okay, this is confirmation. And it's almost like a confirmation for me to be more of myself or to let those qualities out more, to honor it more, to accept it more. And of course, to still work with it in healthy ways because every sign has its imbalances. But but yeah, as a tool of confirmation, I think is a great way of using, astrology. And that's why I tell my clients too. It's like if this isn't confirming for you, then just throw it away. It
Yeah.
means I probably missed something or I've done my job incorrectly. Everything I say today should be confirming. And
Mm.
if it is, then great. You can walk away from this session with greater conviction and clarity and sift away a lot of the noise we have in life. Because trust me, there's a lot of noise, that
Mm.
gets in the way of this stuff. But yeah, just the confirmation really goes a long way. And I think that's how the astrology should be, is used for a tool of confirmation.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that. And I'm wondering actually, because I'm always really big on, okay, we have both and they coexist and that's fine. I don't like to say one is right or one is wrong. I mean, the tropical has served me really well, also in the context of human design. And it was my access point. That's what my body felt drawn to first. And now, as I've grown and evolved, now my body is like, my intuition is guiding me to the true sidereal, right? I cannot deny. Now, what I find happens many times, I think in any kind of field we have, but now in the spiritual world, is like a little bit of a fight, where people are like, no, this is right or this is wrong. And I have seen this even with cosmic human design, where people all of a sudden will then saying like, now all the tropical is wrong, or it's the conditioned self, or like, yeah. And I know from you what I read on your website, you're very much similar with that, right? You talk like
Yeah, I
respectful,
don't.
nicely about
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
tropical.
yeah.
But what is, I mean, I can only imagine because this is kind of shaking up a little bit things. And I mean, people have built businesses based on tropical, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Including myself. I mean, I have been working with human design on based on tropical for a long time. But I have to say that it's because in human design, what happens, we have 5 types, right? And there are different characteristics for the types. And I have always found there's a lot of overlap even between the types, and always like don't take it to the T. Like you can still feel like this, and not make it
Hmm.
like black or white or this is better than this. Like there's so much that applies to many of the different types, right? Because
Yeah.
in human design, what happens if we use a different type of astrology, these types can change. And I think people actually having a little bit of like an identity crisis because they have so identified that I'm this manifesting generator, I'm this projector, and like over identified in some way. And for me, it was a little bit of an awakening of like, whoa, hold on. Maybe even myself was like, maybe I'm identifying a little bit too much with it because look, now all of a sudden I'm basing this on the real true sidereal astrology, and it's actually different and it still resonates. And so I guess my question is for you, like how have you received feedback, or especially in the beginning when you came with this true sidereal, because I can only imagine it's gonna shake things up a little bit in the tropical astrology world, right?
Yeah. Well, for some reason it did a lot at first. Okay. And then it was maybe like the first couple years. But honestly, at this point, I don't even get these emails anymore. I don't get this. I mean, I don't really check YouTube that much. I have a YouTube channel. I don't check
Mm,
the comments there that much anymore like I used to either. But yeah, I don't get that much, in terms of, people reaching out to, debate it or to correct
mm,
something or, in regards to the zodiac system. But there is a lot in the community, absolutely, in those situations, like on Facebook or like groups or things like this, where there would be, a lot of that discussion. So like you said, I just stay out of it because that's not my goal. I'm not trying to convert anybody. This isn't like
mm,
a religion for me or anything like this. All I'm
mm,
trying to do is just share a perspective and just get that perspective out there to as many people as possible. And if whoever hears that doesn't resonate with them, like you said, maybe like it didn't for me, it wouldn't have even for me, 10, 15 years ago.
yeah.
That's how it needs to be. And, never ever suggest, forcing any kind of beliefs on anybody. So I just do my best to share the perspective, to get the information out there, because as far as I see it, a lot of it is just a simple truth that most people just don't even know.
Mm,
Um, most people think that when they're a sun in Gemini or whatever it is, that's literally where the sun was when they were born.
yeah.
I mean, why
That's
would you
not, yeah.
question that? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everyone around you believes it, and it's mainstream and it's adopted. So why would you even question that in the first place?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think the best thing is to just, share the perspective that, hey, there is actually a true sky astrology. Whether it's accurate or not is up to you. I think it's accurate, but that's just my perspective. But at least be conscious and aware that it exists, and maybe that can be helpful to you. And for some people, it is. And I
Yeah.
think it's those people that then, of course, end up going with true sidereal, regular sidereal, but not everyone.
Mm.
I don't
Mm.
even know the percentage, but there's tons of people that, like you said, I think, for one reason or another, won't change systems, and that's 100% cool. I think tropical should always be around. I think it does provide a perspective, like you're saying. Like I still find tropical to be accurate from that angle, from that perspective.
Mm. Mm.
Um, because in astrology, we're creating derivative charts. We create charts of charts. Like a
Mm.
good example is the progressed chart, which
Yeah.
is not the actual sky. It's the sky when you were like X days old. So like if someone's 30, then the progressed chart is the 30th day after they were born, which is not the sky now, and it wasn't the sky when they were born. It's a completely derivative chart. It's based on the birth chart, and then it's changed. And that is how I view tropical, not to take away from tropical, but the fact of the matter is that astrology was originally the sky, all
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
sidereal, and then tropical was a derivative from that. But just because it's a derivative, I don't think that it's not accurate. I just think that it's looking at it from a particular perspective. And I think that perspective is I do believe that it is a more 3D one, a more physical one, but only in the same way that, we go through these seasons in a very, the seasons are very physical. And in the
Mm.
idea of like the karmic cycles, with the seasons, so it never changes. So in a way, it's like kind of being kind of, locked into a consistent, physical third dimensional reality self. And I think that that is still very accurate. Like I still especially identify with my sun sign in tropical.
Mm.
Well, because I was born during the season of
Mm.
of that sign. So, you can take astrology, you can overlay it on top of anything. You can overlay it on like we talked about in the course, like the cycles of life, and you can see that it's the same cycle. And the
Yeah.
seasons are no different. The seasons also go through the same cycle of life, the same cycle of life that astrology goes through. So if you're born in this 11th phase of the life cycle, or it would be Aquarius phase of the
Mm.
seasons,
Mm.
then you're going to exhibit those qualities. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, tropical I think is still very accurate for what it's doing, and I think it's just good to be aware of what it's doing, and how it's different from, like you said, the other forms, or maybe the
Mm.
fact that it's not, maybe just as simply just recognizing that it's not the actual locations, because so many people do think, that it is, rightfully so.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. It's the same for me. I'm also Aquarius and tropical and Capricorn, and I can also relate to both. It's just I find that right now the Capricorn is serving me more to have that more consistency in my business, right? And perseverance and all these kind of things. So, and I still
Mm.
have probably Aquarius somewhere else in my chart, right? Or it's close
Mm.
by, so the energy flows. Plus, we're in the age of Aquarius right now, right? So it's like this whole thing with technology and or
Well, that's a whole other
Capricorn. Well,
topic.
hold on, we're in the age of Capricorn, right? Not Aquarius yet.
Pisces.
Oh,
Pisces.
Pisces. Ah, here
It
you
goes the
go.
it goes the other way, because the ages move backwards. So we go from Pisces to Aquarius to Capricorn, like that. Yeah.
Ah, so when are we really in the age of Aquarius?
In like 700 years.
Okay. I mean, that is interesting, right? I mean, this whole conversation makes me realize how easily we humans just believe things. Like seriously, right?
But again, there is a lot of truth to the Aquarius, though. You know,
Yeah.
like we're in the 11th house of the ages, so we're already 30 degrees from the beginning of Pisces, or the beginning of Aries, the end of Pisces. And this
Yeah.
happened. What's crazy about this is that this happened exactly when we started the Industrial Revolution. So if you do the math
Mm.
and you start with the midpoints that we use, the midpoints of Aries for true sidereal, and then you take it 30 degrees back, that was the late 1800s, almost to the decade that we started inventing,
Mm.
combustion and then electricity and all this industrial stuff.
Oh,
So
yeah. Yeah, because 11th
technology really took
house.
off.
Yeah, 11th house is Aquarius energy, right? Yeah, it's so
Yeah,
true.
that's right.
Very
Yeah.
interesting. But we're in the age of Pisces. Okay, I love that. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that and your perspective. And I really want to thank you for your courage, to just trust yourself and put this out into the world, because I know especially when you're kind of going against what everybody else is doing, I think in the beginning it's just normal that people are like, don't like it because it's change, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, for me, it has been really a blessing. And if that's okay with you, I also have your human design chart
Mm-hmm.
ready. And
Mm-hmm.
thank you for being open to that. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to have a brief look at your tropical human design. And I just want to ask you some things about it, if it resonates at all, and what your take is
Okay.
on it. And I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
share also a couple of things, obviously, from my perspective. And like you said, right, you're not too much into human design yourself. You're more on the astrology side. So first,
Mm-hmm.
actually, this is already your true sidereal. So the tropical. So in the tropical, you are. So I told you, right? We have these types in human design, and you are a generator. We call it a generator in in the tropical human design, and what we always say is like you're here to respond to life, right? Like instead of like trying to figure things out with your mind, you let life come to you, and then you respond and you do what feels right in your gut and your belly. Like you follow that.
Mm-hmm.
And you also have a lot of focused energy in your chart, because these are the gates, right? So every sign, and as you know, like right now we have the tropical, they're all the same size, which as we know is not the way it's supposed to be. But these gates that you see colored in here in your chart, we have those gates somewhere in these signs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have this gate 52, 9, 29. 52 is about stillness, and then the 9 is about focus, the 29 is about determination. And you have also a lot of teaching energy in your chart. Gate 55, we always say that's a very strong teaching energy, and so is gate 50. And I mean, just from what I know about you so far, that's very much who you are, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
you're super focused, you're an astrologer, right? You're not like doing all the different things. You're doing specializing in astrology in a very focused way, and you're teaching it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And also you see like some of these are like the chakras in some way. It's just we have 9 instead of 7, because apparently in 1781 or something, 2 of them split up. And there's a lot of openness in your chart here, which basically means, so when it's wide, it means that those energies we take on from the world, and we can experience it in greater variability. And also with your sun here is Aquarius energy in this chart, right? Is gate 19. That we say in human design is the most sensitive of all of the energies. Like you're highly
Mm-hmm.
tuned to the needs of other people. You can also feel how other people feel very easily.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, that's a huge gift if you ask me about that. So how does that feel
Yeah,
for
that feels right as well. Yeah, yeah, all of that. Yeah, I do find myself, very focused, especially with my work, but in general, like, I'm very focused
you?
on things, and I do feel like I love teaching. I love teaching, I
Yeah,
love learning. And
yeah,
yeah, I am very, sensitive person in general,
yeah,
so that's true too. Yeah.
yeah. No, I love that. So now I'm gonna look at your true sidereal with a human design. And now you become what we call a manifesting generator. And it's funny because I'm a manifesting generator in tropical and a generator in true sidereal. So
Hmm.
anyway, so the manifesting generator archetype is about, and now we can see, right? We have the signs at different sizes. And I think you mentioned, right? Pisces is very big. I think
Hmm.
Virgo is the biggest one,
Hmm.
right? And then
Yeah, it
Taurus
is the
is
biggest.
also really big. And
Yep.
then Aries is a bit smaller, Cancer is smaller, Ophiuchus, did I say that right?
Fucus,
If you could,
Fucus.
yeah, and Scorpio, these are a little bit smaller ones. But anyways, the manifesting generator archetype is all about being multi-passionate.
Mm.
And also we call it the time bender. It's about finding shortcuts. So it's a little
Mm.
bit like
Mm.
ahead of time in some way. And I mean, what you're doing for me is it's a little bit ahead of time because I can only imagine that maybe in 100 years from now, maybe all we do is true sidereal astrology. I mean, I don't have a
Mm-hmm.
fortune teller kind of thing, but
Yeah,
um,
I see that.
yeah, and it's like the manifesting generator like brings all these different things you have learned, and you create like your magic sauce from that, right? And it's really it's about finding these shortcuts. And sometimes we start projects here and there and there. Sometimes we don't finish everything, but in the end, it like all comes together into
Mm.
one big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And what I love the most when I saw also, so now your conscious sun is in no, not Sagittarius, Capricorn, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's gate 58. So your conscious sun is like, well, like the sun, you know this from you're the astrologer, right? Like what gives you life force energy, and that's what you're here to radiate out into the world. What's very
Mm.
cool, this gate we call the joy of mastery. And
Mm.
you're called mastering the zodiac. I mean, you're
Mm.
really here to master. It's about, it comes off the root center. So it's this pressure to evolve and improve things and make it better. And it's through repetition, but joyful repetition. And it becomes more accurate and more precise. And it's in a 5 line. You see the second number here is a line. That's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
how we express this energy. And the 5 line is here is called the fixer, or the person that provides practical solutions, right? So other people can use what you have learned, the solutions you have. Like I feel like I'm benefiting from this now because you have created a very practical solution, and now other people that want to get into astrology, they can use what you have learned through all the wisdom that you have, and bring this out into the world. And that energy is based on, so the earth energy, which is like the yin to the yang, right? We call it stillness. It's like through, stillness, you see, it's almost like you see a forest with all these trees and you know where to focus on.
Mm.
It's almost like a
Mm-hmm.
Buddha kind of little energy, and then you create this
Mm.
joyful mastery. And I don't know, it just felt like
Mm.
that's what you
So
do,
that's so the tropical was accurate, but this feels
right?
like way more specific. Yeah, and
Right.
very
So
true. Yeah, oh yeah.
so
Absolutely.
I'm
Yeah.
kind of right now experimenting with this because I think it's so important for people to see like it's not like one is right or wrong,
Right.
but it's this next level of like it just
Yeah.
clicks, right?
Yeah, that's
And
funny because I've only looked at this briefly. Richard did some for me too, which resonated as well. But the way you just read it, what you were describing about astrology earlier, now it's like that's exactly how this just was for me. Like the
yeah,
tropical was good, but now this was like right on. Yeah.
okay, that's awesome. That's awesome. And a couple other things. So, well, your prosperity is unlocked through your intuition, which you probably, because I mean that's what you did, right? You trusted your intuition. That's your unconscious. Because it's one thing that I find interesting in human design, the left side, right? What you see here on the left, this is 88 days before you were born, where everything was. And that's what we call the
Mm,
unconscious. Now,
mm,
as I mean, I had my first session with you, and I have learned that the outer planets are more the unconscious. So that kind of got me like thinking, like, "Ooh, this is interesting," because in human design, this is all conscious. We're consciously aware that's the time we are born, and this is more the unconscious side. It's like we call it the design, or the body, the physical, like that's a vehicle carrying out the purpose, right? And the
mhm,
personality is more like the soul and what we are consciously aware of. And in your unconscious design, so the unconscious sun, right, which is that sun 88 days before you were born, which is that
mm,
unconscious part, we say that, and this is also from the gene keys, that this is your radiance, that what keeps you healthy and well. It's for your physical, emotional well-being. And you have gate 48 there. gate 48 is all about wisdom. It's called the well. It's like you're this great source of wisdom, right? And when you trust that you know exactly what you need to know at this very point, and you intuitively share what you want to share, right? Um that's an energy for you. And again, just from how I have been perceiving you, right? It's like you are a source of wisdom very, very much, right? From having trusted your intuition so much. And also your north nodes and both the conscious and unconscious. And I think you probably have also Gemini, right? Should be
Mhm.
Gemini north
North
node,
Node.
right? Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So gate 20 is really, I always compare it to the power of now from Eckhart Tolle. That is this gate here coming off the throat center.
Mm.
And it's
I love
about,
that book.
yeah, right, being in the moment. And I feel like when you do your weekly astrology reports and things like, I mean, you're just letting your knowledge, like you speak in the moment, right? Like you
Mm.
just let it flow through your present moment awareness and yeah, just sharing all the wisdom. And obviously, I mean, there's more, but just from the little that I know from
See,
you.
yeah, and I can see how the that left side, the one you just did there, I don't know if this is how it's supposed to be, but I can see how that's like kind of just happening automatically. Like I'm
Yeah,
not, it's very unconscious what you're just
exactly. Like,
describing
yeah,
about me. Like
yeah,
I'm gonna identify consciously way more with what you were saying earlier about being precise and focused and all that. But this one I can totally see, but I would have to really be kind of looking at myself from a third person perspective to
yeah,
see that. But you're
yeah.
absolutely right. I mean, these are the things I strive to do, right? Like I strive to be
Mm,
present. I strive to
mm,
trust my intuition. You know, these are things that maybe they are natural, but you know, in the same way we kind of all idealize our unconscious needs a little bit. Um,
mm,
it is something that I strive towards and I idealize for myself. Like I feel like for me, the best thing for me, like you said, for my health or whatever, but my overall well-being would be to be, you know, very present and then always trusting my intuition and
yeah.
being, you know, open to new knowledge and perspectives. Um, I don't know if it comes easy or not. But maybe that's the point. Maybe it's supposed to be the area that I'm supposed to just kind of get out of my own way and
Mm,
allow to for that to come through. I'm not sure.
mm,
Yeah, but
yeah, yeah.
definitely accurate from that third person view um, of myself, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Yeah, usually I have also found the unconscious, it takes a little bit longer for us. I mean, it's automatically
Mm.
there because it's the unconscious. And
Hmm.
I have found that human design is here for us to make the unconscious conscious so we can
Hmm.
more utilize it perhaps in some way. Um,
Nice. Yeah.
yeah. And you
That's
have
how I
your,
like to use the astrology too. Yeah.
yeah,
To
no? Because
to
it's
work with it
it's
constructively,
yeah.
consciously. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think there's, I mean, also in like self-development, life coaching is always like this big iceberg, right? Like your conscious mind is
Hmm.
just that 3%, 5%, but then here's all the rest. And
Yeah.
we just run on autopilot on these beliefs that are not serving us or these perceptions of ourselves, like the conditioned or the ego, right? What we think we should be to fulfill society's expectations or what our parents were telling us, right? And here it's like, oh gosh, like and you know it, but when we make it conscious, it's like, okay, now I'm really gonna actually put my attention more onto it. So I'm more gonna cultivate that unique strength that I have anyways, but I'm just giving it more attention.
Yeah. And it's so good to, I think, make it into a practice. Like if I was to make, you know,
Mm.
like the being in the present moment more of a practice, if I was to, you know, have a way of connecting more to my inner knowledge, my inner wisdom or my intuition, make that a
Mm.
practice.
Mm.
You're right. I mean, I think that would really increase my health and I think my well-being in general,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah,
Is that
no.
how is that how you would perhaps work with that from a, you know, human design perspective, like making it conscious and more of a practice?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
unconscious?
I mean the unconscious, yeah, definitely, because
Yeah.
the unconscious is what we, yeah, don't see the most, right?
Yeah.
And that's the
Yeah.
physical, like the conscious is like what we're consciously aware of, and the unconscious is that's the physical body. Like if my physical body is not well, how am I gonna carry out my
Right.
purpose? So they kind of dance together. And another thing, so there are two more things, and then I'm gonna
Hmm.
stop. I don't want to overwhelm you. Um, so your conscious Mercury, and as you know, Mercury is communication and all of this, like what we're here to talk about. Now it's in the gate 5 and also in line 5. And gate 5, we call it, it's about routines and habits and also the natural order of routines. And I feel like, I mean, that's what you do every week. You share what's happening in the sky every week and how nature goes with the flow of life, and the seasons are changing, the signs are changing and shifting. And it's in the
Yeah.
5 line again, which is that practical oriented way of giving people practical solutions to that, right? So
Hmm.
um you do that. And your unconscious Mercury is gate 46. That we call the love of the body. So that's all about embodiment and actually taking care, nourishing the physical body. So that's also very interesting. And then the last thing, so the unconscious moon, and you know, the moon and conscious is a big one for us, right? The unconscious
Hmm.
moon, we call that the attraction sphere in the gene keys, which is also a very, very powerful one. And you have gate 2. Gate 2 is the most feminine. It's this one here. It's the most feminine of all the energies in the chart. So there is something for you with receiving and allowing support. That's really the energy that's here, so that you don't have to do everything by yourself, and actually like also feel worthy of that, right? That it's okay
Mm.
to receive
Yeah.
support and
Yeah, it's a big
um
one for me there.
let that be. I know I have that too in my chart. It was kind of a slap in the face in the beginning because there can be easily this energy of overgiving and overdoing and always
Yeah.
being the person that does it. But when we can allow other people to be in their zone of genius and allow support to come in, the more you can also then just focus on your, zone of genius.
Yeah, perfect. Again, that being an area that I could work on more.
Yeah, you go.
You know? Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
Wow.
Thank you for being open to that. That was
Yeah,
actually
thank you for that.
very cool
Yeah.
for myself because my intention right now is to really help people understand that it's not like one is right or wrong. It seems that for
Right.
some, like yourself, myself, lots of people that have been in my world so far, that there is an even greater resonance with a truth idea. But we can use both and actually bring both elements together and like you say too, no? Use what resonates and leave the rest. I say that all the time to my people because I'm not here to put you in a box. I'm not here to tell you what you have to do. If there's anything that speaks to you, you will feel that in your body, then it's absolutely fantastic, right?
Yeah, totally. And in a way, it's like, so you have 5 types, right? With the human
Yes.
main 5 main types.
Yeah.
And it's like and tell me if you see it like this, but like in astrology, I see it as like we're the whole zodiac, it's like everyone
Yeah.
has Aries and everyone has Cancer, and no matter where the planets are. And so we're the whole, in the ideal self, the true self, let's say, the true self is the whole zodiac,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe it is the 5 types. And
Mm-hmm.
so, in a way, it's like we are all the 5 types. And then depending on the system you're using, you're kind of looking at that self or that true self from a different
Mm-hmm.
perspective,
Yeah.
and then based on what perspective you're looking at, might tell you that, hey, maybe this type is going to be more important from this perspective, or maybe this is where you can self-care from this perspective or
Yeah.
whatever. Um, but at the end of the day, it's like, I mean, the true self is all this, right? When
Yeah.
would you agree with
Yeah,
that?
exactly. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for. I love that you say this because you're not the into human design too much, because that's what I've been trying to say almost for
Mm.
years, because people can get so attached to the types, and there's sometimes even
Yeah.
this like, oh, I wish I would be the other type, right? And
Yeah.
if I look at a chart, I have done this lots of times with people like, yeah, you're a generator, but you have elements of a projector. You also have like reflector, for example, has all the centers wide and undefined. And if I'm going to tell you about the reflector, because you have also lots of openness in your chart, especially the tropical that I showed you, the white centers, right? That's
Hmm.
when we take on energies from around us, and it can sometimes, it's highly sensitive energy. So it's also a lunar being. They are more attuned to the lunar cycle,
Hmm.
but we all really are somehow attuned to the lunar cycle, right? So
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
found I can relate to all types. It's just there's one type that has the bigger message for me at this point,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
there's another type called the manifester, and they are more initiating energy. They're more getting things started. And they have to, one of the big things for them is to inform when they do something that impacts other people. That doesn't mean I'm as a generator should not inform. I mean, informing is
Right.
one of the most or best relationship skills I think we can have, so people feel
Yeah.
included. And there are specific gates in the human design chart. For example, there's gate, you don't have it here right now, 51, 53, 54, some other ones that is very initiating energy itself. And when people have that, they will feel a lot
Hmm.
like a manifester,
I
but
see.
they might still be
Yeah.
another type. So that's why I feel like this whole human design conversation now with this new perspective of true sidereal astrology for me was such a blessing because I feel confirmed how I always felt also about human design. Because if we look, I mean, astrology, we think it's okay for us to have all these different systems, right? We don't question that. But in human design, it can change this type so much. And then people
So much. Yeah.
they literally have an identity crisis because they're
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I was a projector and I thought because of this, I can't do this. And now I'm a manifesting generator. And now I can't do this. And I'm like, well, doesn't that tell you something about how easily we can like limit ourselves, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting about human design that it would change completely. Like, because like I was saying with tropical, it's maybe just some differences, but
Yeah.
yeah, it just clicked for me that human design might, yeah, it would be a almost completely different chart then. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because these gates that you see here, right, which is basically just like the houses and the signs, it's just there's then also this is the gate here, and then each gate has 6 lines that it can go through. And each gate you
Hmm.
have, you're gonna see this colored in the chart. There's 64 total. And
Hmm.
when two gates come together, like this one here, the 20 and the 34, it activates or defines these two centers. That's why they're colored in.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
anytime a center is colored in and defined, you will see, and this is what's called a channel. When two gates come together, it's a channel. And then the two centers on each side, they become defined. That's the energy you're here to
Hmm.
radiate out into the world, kind of like sun energy in some way. What's white and undefined, we are more receptive. It's more feminine. It's more like we learn this energy through other people, different environments, sometimes stronger, sometimes less. And
Okay.
yeah, that's how that works. And like I said, now a couple of gates changed, obviously, right? Because of the different
Yeah.
astrology. And your
Totally
type
different.
is no longer, I mean,
Plus,
you
there's
could,
so many little types in there, like you were saying, like all those different kinds that have their own kind of generator-like or
yeah.
manifestor-like energies, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I just love that how you already see that, from just being like fairly
Yeah.
new to human design.
And you
So
as well. It's nice to get that confirmation from me as well. Sometimes I
yeah.
feel a little alone out there sometimes with this stuff.
Yeah, no, I know because I don't know, it just comes easy to me. And I think probably for you as well, right? There's a reason why we see it
Yeah.
this way. And look, there are gonna people that are gonna disagree with that, but that was
Yeah.
feels true in my heart, and that's how I like to do what I do, and I feel like it helps people a lot.
And I
Awesome.
don't think you could do it any other way, probably,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. That's my true nature. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Ethan, for first of all sharing your wisdom of K48. And
Very welcome.
everything that you do, also for being so open to having a peek at the human design. I think my audience is going to really, really appreciate that a lot. And I also wanted to know, how can people find you? And I know you have this also amazing offer discount for people.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
tell us
so
about.
masteringthezodiac.com. So I recommend just going there and viewing the sky when you were born. So you can look at it from the chart, like a astrology chart, but you can also see it visibly in the sky. So you'll see exactly where the planets were when you were born. So yeah, masteringthezodiac.com, view your signs there. There's also a free little report on the bottom of that you can read. If you do want the full report, I'm happy to give your viewers a 50% discount. So
That's
if you go to
awesome.
masteringthezodiac.com, / report dash discount, that's / report dash discount, you'll get 50% off. But first, I recommend just look at the sky, see if it resonates, and go from there.
Awesome. And I'm gonna make sure I put everything in the show notes. Thank you again, Ethan. It was such a joy. And you listeners, thank you for being here as always. And I'm very happy to be with you all on the next episode.